Hi, welcome everyone. How's everybody doing? Good. Awesome. Well, welcome. So you might know our next speaker as the woman shaking up the advertising world, but today she's going to be sharing her wisdom on how to lead innovative change with confidence. So without further ado, please welcome Carole Lawson with MarketStorm.
Good, I didn't fall. Okay. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm Carole Lawson of MarketStorm. Let's go through a little bit of the agenda that we're going to talk about. I'm going to do some introductions because that's always kind of required. We're going to talk about the change process. I want to start with how we're trained around change and what works, what doesn't work, why what you were trained in probably won't work for you. And then we've got some key takeaways. So my hope is there'll be just one thing in this that you can take with you and use to implement change in your own organization. So, introductions, it's me. I started managing innovative change about 20 years ago. I was working for the Schwarzenegger administration in the state of California. Most of the work that I've been doing in change management and developing innovation has been in the very unforgiving environment of government. I've since retired and spectacularly flunked retirement. I now am a data scientist and founding partner of MarketStorm. We are doing things in ways that are completely different from what you might consider when you're thinking about programmatic. That's mainly the space that we work in. The DSPs that we work with, they quite often tilt their head sideways like, why are you doing that? Why are you building your audience that way? Because it works. So there's nothing wrong with being different. That's the first thing you need to understand when you're managing change. There's nothing wrong with being different. Sometimes we feel like because we see the world in a different way, that somehow there's something off with our perspective, and then we try to change that. So I would encourage all of you who are leading change, don't even go there. If you understand that your perspective is a little bit different, if you understand that your perspective can see beyond, be thankful for that because most people can't. MarketStorm, a little bit about that. I won't spend a lot of time. We are primarily, as I said, in the programmatic marketing space. We develop custom algorithms for our clients. We implement those algorithms primarily through programmatic. Most of our clients, most of our direct clients are other agencies, so we do a lot of white labeling. If you haven't heard our name, that's okay. You've probably seen some of the ads. We work a lot in the home services space, which is a unique space that has to be considered differently. We also work with a lot of big franchise groups. So just to give you an idea of who we are, we're not just Joe down the street marketing company that does programmatic. We're really working in some new avenues. And all of the history that I have with leading change has allowed us to not only think differently, but allowed us to communicate differently, particularly when we're working with these other agencies. Most of these agencies are thinking in terms of Google ads and social ads, and that's not at all what we do. Luckily, I went through an executive program on change management, talked about the first phase of change, and you get the idea, your leadership sponsors, you implement the change, you deal with the objections, and your change is like magic. It doesn't happen. It does not happen that way. So most of the things you've learned about change management really are not going to play out the way that you think that they will. When you walk into an organization, so you have Domo, right? Domo is amazing. You're going to walk in and implement Domo across your organization. Most people haven't heard of that yet. That's what you're going to face. This is the true pathway of change. There's some really great research about this, which I'm not going to show you what it is until the end because I really don't want you looking it up on your phone while I'm talking. So, there's a lot more to change than just the process. We're going to be breaking down each one of these. This might look a little bit scary and daunting right now, but By the time we're done, you'll completely understand it. Where we're going is you see the current state, you see those nice straight arrows, everything's calm and quiet, huge confusion in the center, down to the straight arrows again, everything becomes calm and quiet. You will get there. But first, you have to go through Betty, Billy, and Bob. Betty, Billy, and Bob are great at Excel. Betty, Billy, and Bob are the ones that everybody goes to. They have a stature in the organization that, not necessarily because they're managers, but because they're the cool kids with Excel. And as soon as you start talking about bringing in Domo, or as soon as you start talking about changing their platform, Betty, Billy, and Bob are going to be a little bit less than enthusiastic. What happens when you introduce something like that? What's really happening is you're changing the entire social dynamic of that part of the organization. When you're managing change, you're managing a social dynamic more than you're managing the technology. Technologies can be taught. Classes can be taught. Conversations can be had with leadership. They can do the directing of this is what we're doing, this is our goals for the future. Betty, Billy, and Bob are not going to like it. You're disrupting their lives, which is why it's called disruption. You're about to shake up the entire power balance of your organization. Does that make sense so far? All right. Well, let's talk about how to do that. So, your once productive work environment is going into confusion. Noise is going to set in, and that's that center part of the diagram. The noise comes from Betty, Billy, and Bob, and they get their friends all stirred up. There's nothing more powerful at this moment than FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Those are the three tools that the people who want to stop change are going to use. It will develop organizational resistance. But it's all right, because if any of us have read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, magic happens, and you hit the tipping point, and it's that big red arrow, and you go right into that nice yellow smooth path. What we're going to talk about, or what we're going through now, is how do you get to the tipping point? That tipping point isn't magic. There's research behind it. There are ways that you can navigate your way to the tipping point. So, let's talk about that a little bit. Before we can even start navigating the tipping point, you're going to have something that happens that you don't expect. Your leadership who said, we're going to do this. We're implementing Domo. Strong, bold face. Betty, Billy, and Bob have had their ear for a long time. Betty, Billy, and Bob are the ones that they've always relied on to get them the data that they need. Betty, Billy, and Bob are freaking out. Betty, Billy, and Bob are running to your leadership. And you're standing there not really realizing that that's happening. And the fear of change is putting pressure on the organization, and you still have to implement this. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. There's a process to this. It's repeated over and over and over again. And I can tell you stories about implementing this kind of change, and it doesn't matter if it was implementing a significant change across all the websites in the state of California, or convincing Department of, I'm sorry, I just want to laugh at this one. So I'll tell the whole story. When I was working for Governor Schwarzenegger, it was also in the time of the recession. It was in the time of emerging technologies also. Facebook was new. Google was new. MySpace was around. Twitter was brand new. Twitter was a place where you talked about what you had for lunch, right? So Governor wanted to make sure that he didn't miss out on anything, and he was ahead of the curve. So he developed this Innovation Council, which I chaired. And we're talking to all of these social platforms which we had just learned that there was a word like social associated with platforms, that those things really didn't exist together before. And he wanted to know what was the best way to start delivering government services on the social platforms. And there were hearings going on in the legislature, which is always fun. One of the things that happened at the same time is the budget got cut for the high schools. The thing they decided to remove was driver training. So here we are. High school kids no longer have driver training paid for by the state of California. I had a ragtag group of people. We decided, with the help of some folks from YouTube, that we could create YouTube lessons to teach people how to get their driver's license and go through each module. We were looked at like we had 3 heads. Nobody cares about that TV channel where people are posting their dog. Nobody cares. And I was directed to find a more substantial answer to that question. So we went with YouTube. Anyway, by the time we had produced all of these funky videos, which are still out there today, I believe, we had the entire driver training course up on the state of California's website with a link to YouTube. It got integrated into the curriculum in high school. Once again, driver training was in high school. The other thing it did is it allowed people who maybe didn't have access to driver training or who had trouble reading to get their driver's licenses, because all of a sudden this thing that was a joke became a really powerful tool. Sharing that because you're going to walk into your organization and these people, Betty, Bobby, and Bill, are going to be telling your leadership, this whole Domo thing, I know you spend a lot of money. It's a joke. I mean, I can do this in Excel. I can. So what's the business purpose behind this? Well, we want to share the dashboards. I can share Excel. Come on. So your leadership is going to go from, this is what we're doing, to, wait, what? Oh, no, this is what we're doing. We're fine. They're going to watch it for a little while. They're going to be biting their lip. And then they're going to say, what is wrong with that project team? They haven't implemented this yet. I'm still hearing this noise. By the time it does get implemented, they'll be the heroes because they made the decision in the first place. That's all okay. That's part of the pattern. And if you know that that's what you have to expect, then it's a lot easier. So you watch it happen and you say, there it is. I know where I am in the pathway. All right. So what is it that you do? You are there down at the very bottom. These little arrows going up, these are the people that are willing to experiment and, more importantly, willing to fail. These are the people that are willing to try things. Now, if you notice, Betty, Bobby, and Bill and their cohorts are not there. In our training, we're taught to find the champions. And we're taught to identify those champions that have enough stature to convince the rest of the organization. And that we answer their questions, we get over their objections, and those champions will carry it for us. They won't. My experience is they won't. So you find different champions. You find people who are willing to experiment and try something different, just like this weird ragtag group that I found that was willing to do videos of driver training. Some of these people will make incredible things. Some of these people will make incredible errors. The best thing that you can do as you're working your way through this is do it quietly. Publicize the wins. Minimize the losses. Figure out how to loop back around again and try again. If you say, well, this group over here, they're absolutely doing these driver training videos, somebody's going to shoot at it. Do not create targets. Create awards. Create badges of honor. Make sure that the groups that you're working with that are willing to experiment have a safe place to do that. The other thing, too, that I would say, and I know that it's a little further down in the presentation, the smaller the problem, the smarter the solution. The smaller the problem, the smarter the solution. One of the things that I find often as we are trying to implement change is we have these big visions, and we want to implement the entire vision all at once. You're bound to have issues if you try to do that. In your big vision is made up of maybe 100 small problems. Find those small problems. Solve the small problem. Make a really smart solution around the small problem. Find the next small problem. Solve that small problem. I was talking to somebody at lunch the other day, and they had just brought Domo in, but Tableau was the big dashboard product that they had in their organization. He really wanted to use Domo, so he started creating small dashboards and sending them out. And he picked one team, a sales team, and he created dashboards for his sales team. And then he created another one, and then he shared one at a meeting. And then he created another one, and pretty soon there was a high degree of interest in those dashboards. And it wasn't because he stood up and said, here's my big project plan, here's my big waterfall, we're going to do all these things at this point, and you just sit back and be amazed. That kind of approach is inviting people to sit back and shoot at you. Just saying. All right. So don't listen to the people causing the confusion. That big circle in the middle, Billy, Betty, and Bob, don't be swayed by them. Understand that's going on, but don't let it draw you in. Don't let it take your soul away. Don't let it take that fire away. Be fine with it going on. When you speak to the leadership, say, I get that Billy, Bobby, and Betty, Billy, and Bob. Now I can't even say it. Anyway, those guys over there, I get that they're upset. I get that they're having an issue with this. It's okay. We're going to be fine. Yeah, I know what they're saying. We're going to be fine. Add that sense of calm. Don't engage in that specific conversation. As soon as you start playing on their playing field, you'll lose. They'll come up with things like, well, talking to the coworkers, did you hear about the last project? When they can't win on the basis of the new change that you're implementing, when they can't win on the basis of Domo, of Excel over Domo, it will become, did you hear about their last project? Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to be associated with that? Don't listen to that. You're fine. You're fine. All of that is a tactic to remain in control and to restore that old power structure. What you focus on are those changes. The changes become the innovations that change your organization. All right. The reason why this works is you're going to be building out small things that are going to be noticed. People will start saying, how'd you do that? What is that? How is that? Somebody's going to start using it. And then the fear of missing out is going to overpower the fear of change. The fear of missing out will overpower the fear of change. The small innovations are going to be the thing that creates that fear of missing out. What happens then, once the fear of missing out becomes more powerful than the fear of change, that's when you hit the tipping point. That's how that happens. It doesn't happen because of magic. It doesn't happen because of karma, although I think karma plays a part in it. It doesn't happen because you're wonderful or you have the right connections, and you probably are wonderful and have the right connections, but that's not the only reason. It happens because organizationally, culturally, people are beginning to feel like they're going to miss something if they don't go over there. What am I missing over there? What is that? That's when the tipping point comes. All right, now my guess is this slide looks different to you now than it did the first time you saw it. So what happens when you are leading change? You're moving from a secure environment. You're moving from a place where there's a sense of personal value in a group. You're moving from a current sense of balance. You're moving from the current political environment. You're moving into disruption. You're underscoring the ability for this change to be strong and happen and enduring by these small wins. The storm can brew in the center, and that's okay. That's okay. It's those small wins and that tipping point that is going to bring everything back to the stability again. It doesn't happen overnight. It does not happen overnight. So some of the things that my personal mentors talked to me about was, don't look down. Stay on target. Just keep going. And I have this voice ringing in my head from one of my early mentors, just keep going. Just keep going. Oops, wrong button. All right. So some key takeaways. And I'm kind of rushing through this so we can talk. So the number one thing is expect pushback. We have this wide-eyed view of disruption that we're going to go in and we're going to disrupt and we're going to be that hero, right? And that's not how it happens. You're going to walk into a storm. You're going to be strong. You're going to figure out how to have those small wins. You're going to develop that fear of missing out. And then you're going to walk out into the sunlight. You have to understand your leadership will have a moment. They may have more than one. That's okay. Keep telling them it's going to be fine. That's where the little award sort of things come in with the small wins. The leadership will feel a lot better if they can see the small things happening. It also begins to mute the voice. Because what you're doing with these small wins, your leadership is having this moment. They don't know what to say about what's going on. You're giving them something. You're pulling a little jewel out of your pocket. Look what we did. See this little thing? Look at this little thing over here. Look at how this part of the organization is doing this. Isn't that cool? It starts muting the other voices. If you don't walk away with anything else, walk away with this. The smaller the problem, the smarter the solution. We make bad decisions when we try to do too much. Smaller the problem, the smarter the solution. And the fear of missing out is so much stronger than the fear of change. It's so much stronger than the fear of change. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why is it we're not following the normal change pattern? Why don't we just go find those champions that are in that core of the organization? Let me ask you this. How many of you believe Uber went out and started lobbying cab drivers? How many of you believe Airbnb approached the hotel industry? Understand what you're disrupting. Understand what you're disrupting. And if you understand what you're disrupting, you'll understand where those small change makers are, because they're not in the middle of that. All right, here is the research. And I can send this to you. This research actually was done in the Netherlands. The research itself was about changing the entire agricultural industry by changing the ability and access to pesticides. and how there was so much pushback from that industry, and how the government eventually got those pesticides banned. And then in decomposing that research, this pattern comes up. Comes up over and over and over again. And as I walk through the things that I've done, the multiple things that I've done in my career leading change, this pattern is there. Even to the extent of opening our marketing agency. So we open up our agency. We develop custom algorithms. That's kind of unheard of. It was before ChatGPT. Everybody thought we were snake oil. They thought, we're just making that up. You can't use AI like that. You're just making that up. We didn't do Google ads. We didn't do websites. We didn't do all the normal stuff. We did this, and we served it through programmatic. Oh, you're programmatic. Yeah. We use those third-party audiences. They're all built by, like, AI, right? No, that's not what we do. It took a while to get that conversation going, and we started with some small local home services companies. The small local home services companies had so much success, they told their friends, who told their friends, who told their friends, who told the agencies that did the Google ads and the websites and the social. And now our business is primarily working with those other agencies. In the process, also, franchises, big franchises, figured out what we were doing because they heard about us. And so now we work with big franchises. Most of our business now is not with the individual small agencies, it's through these groups. It was the introduction of ChatGPT that made the difference for us. That was our watershed moment. Because all of a sudden there was an understanding of the power of what we did. ChatGPT wasn't released for a marketing purpose alone. You can find a lot of information there for marketing, by the way, if you ever wanted to know. It was released for a completely different purpose. So as you're developing these small wins, these small steps along the way, don't worry if it's not exactly the core purpose. You'll get there. You'll get there. Some of these things are the things that will develop that watershed moment and create that fear of missing out. It's that fear of missing out that caused our agency to grow from 7 clients to over 100 in a matter of a year. Fear of missing out is stronger than the fear of the unknown. It's stronger than the fear of change. All right. So I left some time so we could ask questions. There's always a lot of questions. Yeah?
Hi, thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful. I own a law practice, and I just heard your advice about small problem, smarter solution, and I failed that. We just had a project. It wasn't Domo. We weren't releasing Domo to our team, but something very similar, AI-based. And I had this grand vision. I told them this is what's going to happen, and it failed because just the AI technology wasn't there, and I kind of now have my tail between my legs. I feel like I've lost credibility with my team now. Any tips or advice for me on how to approach this?
Yeah, say that. So no, seriously. It's disarming when you're honest, right? Coming back and being able to say, I learned a few things. That we took a bite that was too big. I understand now that the technology was not mature enough, and now it is. And I now understand how we're going to do this. This might be the end point. But we are not going to try to do this all at once right now. We're going to start here. And we're going to walk into it a little at a time. Yeah?
It's been my experience that Billy, Betty, and Bob sometimes are free members of the
Yes.
I mean, I've somewhat experienced what you're doing with other clients. I've noticed that just creating small tools kind of changes above. Is that your recommended way of just like finding the small things, even though it's just literally an employee that's just started 2 weeks ago?
Yes. Surprisingly, yes. So all of my training in change management would be to go back to the C-suite and get your executive sponsors and get them all lined up, and maybe there's the one that's your sponsor, and you know, Billy, Betty, and Bob. You need to go talk to them and win them over. That's not going to happen. And the reason why it's not going to happen because they're upset because in some way they're being unempowered. You are disrupting their cultural standing more than their business standing. So understand that that's happening. Make sure you communicate to those in the C-suite who are your champions and say, I understand this is happening. I want you to know, don't worry about it. Here's what we're doing. Does that help?
Sometimes it doesn't work.
You know, nothing works all the time. Nothing works all the time. But this has been a 90%er for me. And I've been in some really tough situations. And understanding what the navigation looks like and understand what I'm going to face is part of what's really made the difference. But you're right. Nothing ever works all the time. Yeah.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm in a little bit of an interesting situation. Oh, thank you. They'll turn it on for you. Okay. Oh, yep, there we go. I'm in a little bit of an interesting situation where I was brought in to re-roll out Domo.
Yes.
The previous leadership where this happened, it wasn't actually Domo. It was a lot of the data behind it was bad, and there was no transparency, and there's a lot of data quality issues. But of course, people who are not in tech don't understand that it wasn't Domo's fault. That was things that were
Right.
behind the scenes. And so I'm in this interesting spot of change management, but I'm trying to tell people, no, it'll be okay this time.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you just have to stay on that. It will be okay this time. And I find that acknowledging the mistakes of the past is the best way to start a conversation, to be able to tell people they're right. Yeah, it was a mess. Here's what we did wrong last time.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
Over here,
right.
in the back here.
Okay, do we have two microphones?
Yeah, you
Well,
can't
this
see
get-
me. I'm all the way in the back.
Okay. Yeah, I've got lights in my eyes, and all I'm seeing kind of is the top of people's heads.
That's okay. I work with a big, large firm of accountants, and accountants hate change. They like
my
to work
gosh.
in their Excel files. Do you have suggestions on how to get them into Domo?
Yeah, I would say create things that show them what's possible. So, you know, I work with government. Government hates change too. And the only way I was able to move the needle in government was to be able to start showing these small successes, really small successes. And then start using those kinds of things, those small successes in conversations and in meetings. Then people start getting intrigued. If you try to go in and tell somebody who's at the top of their game that you're changing everything, they're going to shoot you. I mean, metaphorically, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, and everybody's got that space that they love, right? This is the space that they're comfortable in. And if you're walking into that space that they're comfortable in, and you're saying, we're changing everything, there's not going to be a great reaction. If you walk into the space that they're comfortable in, and you say, I've got this little thing that could give you an edge. Can we try this little thing? They're more inclined to engage. Does that make sense? There was somebody over here. I see a hand.
Hi, it's John from PlayStation. This is really reaffirming. So the way that we made most of our internal success within PlayStation was exactly this. Small wins. Departments coming on board, people wanting to innovate, people wanting to change, us supporting them, not doing the work, supporting them, enabling them. They then told their friends, who told their friends, who told their friends. So it's just really reassuring. I mean, okay, I'm also from a farming background, so okay, so it was pesticides that was the research for it. But cool, like, do you know what I mean? But it, like, I will double down on this. It's like, this does work. Like, yes, you're going to get some failures. Yes, you're going to get some naysayers. And Billy is next to me. So that's also true. No, it's not. But just want to double down. It's great that you're showing this because it really does work at huge organizations like at PlayStation and also, in smaller organizations. So please listen to this. This is great. Please adopt.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So I'm going through something very similar to the re-rolling out Domo. One of the hurdles I'm finding is that the person who rolled it out before is still there and is a huge naysayer. And everything that we're doing to correct things is having the side effect of pointing out that this person is not as stable or knowledgeable as they expect. So the part that I'm kind of battling with, that's probably more internally, is that I like rising tide raises all ships. This ship is starting to wane on that side. So it's a hard thing at the same time of trying to roll out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that previous you're trying to raise all ships in a quiet way, and they're developing a wave machine.
And anchored. So
Yeah.
they're going to drown.
Yeah. So that's really kind of a tough one. Change really, like we were talking about in the beginning, change is cultural. It really has less to do with the technology than it does with the culture. So I've been in situations similar to that, and the only way I was able to work around that is to find somebody in leadership who was over this individual who could help mitigate some of those conversations. Not whine about it, but just be able to say, I'm concerned that as we roll this out, that this is going to inflict pain on this person. Because what we're going to be revealing is this. We've already had some experience that showed that they're very uncomfortable because now we've shown that they really didn't know how to use that ETL. Whatever that was. But when it's that personal, you're going to have to get somebody bigger than you to help.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I've heard the phrase a lot today, people don't like change, be it doctors, be it, all sorts of people don't like change, people in finance, etc. When you're implementing change, how do you go about finding those right people in your organization who will be on board with the journey?
Well, sometimes they walk up to you, and if that happens, it's magic. I wouldn't expect that to happen. Sometimes there's a group that's the most likely group to accept change, and you need to get together and talk to them. Identify the people who are the least likely to accept change, and don't fight with them, but try to find those pockets. So here's an example. I was working for Governor Schwarzenegger, and this was like way back machine, okay? So this is 2007. And he wanted to move the state of California from 47th in the nation, according to Brown University in the website rankings, a little bit competitive, he didn't like that, to number 1. We were in a frames environment. We had webmasters across the state who were just pissed off because everything was so constrained and so controlled that they couldn't do anything. What I was told to do was go to every director and tell them they'll do this, and tell the directors that governor said they're going to tell their webmasters to do that. That would have worked. I mean, come on now. What we did instead was call a meeting for all the webmasters. And when we called the meeting, we said, we're implementing this new strategy. We want to talk to you about what it is. They all showed up to figure out what we're going to do to them now. I am certain that if there was not a sprinkler system in that building, they would have come in with torches. It was terrible. They were treated so badly. We had to stand there for about 20 minutes and listen to them just unload on us. We didn't have anything to do with what happened previously. The turning point came when we said, we deserve that. We understand the path to get here was not great. We understand you weren't respected, but that's not going to happen now. And we literally took a whiteboard and wrote down what happened last time. And then I said, this was before the printing whiteboards, 2007. I said, take a picture of that. Somebody take physical cameras. Because that's not what's going to happen this time. And you can hold us accountable to that. And then we typed all that up and sent that out to the webmasters. There was about 75 in the room at the time. Within 3 months, our webmaster user group was over 300. And they were coming in and they were working collaboratively to transition to cascading style sheets from frames, to create new templates, to create a whole new future for the state of California. And within a very short period of time, we won Best of the Web. Thank you. And matter of fact, if you see the ca.gov, my team did that. Just saying. But sometimes you have to take it on the chin for somebody else's mistakes. Acknowledge those mistakes.
We have time. All right. We have time for one more question.
I'd like to say thank you for confirming that I'm not completely nuts.
You are not nuts.
As a team of one and talking about the taking over a legacy piece of Domo and having to bring it into the current time. So thank you for reaffirming that these things are okay to work on each piece at a time. And just one of my takeaways from this is there was a person who was, I call, there's dogs that bark.
Right.
And sometimes the dogs that bark aren't the problem, because I had somebody who kept on looking at the stuff and we kind of went quietly into the changes. And about 3 to 4 months into it, he started coming and it's like, and then he started being one of my biggest champions. And I was like, I'm going to just give him the microphone.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Thank you for that. And can we use FUD, or is that trademarked?
Oh, no, FUD is not trademarked. As a matter of fact, Elmer Fudd,
Right?
the FUD is an old expression. You've heard of Elmer Fudd with Bugs Bunny? Elmer, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Elmer Fudd. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.